Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
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 Thank you. Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Deo, Deo.
Baby's got a burger and a shooter and that shake it all go down. Baby's got a burger and a shooter and that shake it all go down. Corrosion, corrosion to her thighs, erosion, erosion of her pride. Baby's got, baby's got, baby's got corrosion now, corrosion now. Baby's got it.
Greetings and salutations here from Chicagoland. 33 degrees. Man, it was 60 just last week. But it is what it is. It is still winter time. So what are you going to do? Just have to grin and bear it. Hello, everybody. I'm Uncle Warren. If you didn't know already, that's what the name says there. We can take that off. We got a lot of news to get to today. Let me say hi to Chuck and Max over in on YouTube there. Anybody else who's lurking and listening, good morning to you as well. We are live on YouTube, on Rumble, on Facebook, and I'm still trying to figure it out, but I think I think we are on Substack. I could be wrong. Let me just I didn't even check that. Let me see. Is it even going to Substack? Let's see. Let me try that again. No, I guess we're not doing that. That's so weird why it does that. Anyway, a lot of news too. In fact, we got breaking news. That's right. This is hot off the presses this morning. U.S. Supreme Court rejects Trump's global tariffs. Oh, naughty, naughty. Yeah, speaking of naughty, naughty. Lutnick. Like Futnick. Yeah, so, yeah, the Supreme Court said, enough of your bullshit. So U.S. Supreme Court struck down today Trumpy sweeping tariffs that he pursued under a law meant for use in national emergencies, rejecting one of his most contentious assertions of his authority in a ruling with major implications for the global economy. The justices in a 6-3 ruling authored by conservative Chief Justice John Roberts upheld a lower court's decision that the Republican president's use of this 1977 law exceeded his authority. Well, you're just coming up with that now? Hey, good morning, Willie. Good to see you. The court ruled that the Trump administration's interpretation that the law at issue, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA, grants, hey, Cooper Duper, good to see you, grants Trump the power he claims to impose tariffs, would intrude on the powers of Congress and violate a legal principle called the Major Questions Doctrine. Boy, talk about major questions. Anyway, across the board, the doctrine embraced by the conservative justices requires actions by the government's executive branch of vast economic and political significance to be clearly authorized by Congress. The court used the doctrine to stymie some of Democratic former President Joe Biden's key executive actions. Roberts, citing a prior Supreme Court ruling, wrote that, quote, the president must point to clear congressional authorization to justify his extraordinary assertion of the power to impose tariffs, adding he cannot. Trump has leveraged tariffs. He's so high right now. You'll wake and bake, motherfuckers. Willie says, I am somewhat a protectionist, and I hate Trump on protectionism because in the future, normies will write off actual needed tariffism as Trumpism redux. That's true. Yeah, he's definitely tainting the waters for the future. That's for sure. So Trump has leveraged tariffs, taxes on imported goods as a key economic and foreign policy tool. A tool using a tool. They have been central to a global trade war that Trump initiated after he began his second term as president, one that has alienated trading partners, affected financial markets, and caused global economic uncertainty. The Supreme Court reached its conclusion in a legal challenge by businesses affected by the tariffs, and 12 U.S. states, most of them Democratic, govern against Trump's unprecedented use of this law to unilaterally impose the import taxes. 3 dissenting justices, these assholes, were conservatives: Clarence Thomas, Mr. Pubic Hair on the Coke can, Samuel Alito, and Brett Kavanaugh. Both joining Roberts in the majority were conservative justices Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett, both of whom Trump appointed during his first term in office, along with the 3 liberal justices. Oh, look at that. And Trumpy's people biting them in the ass. Isn't that nice? The Supreme Court, which has a 6-3 conservative majority, previously had backed Trump in a series of other decisions issued on an emergency basis since he returned to the presidency in January last year after his policies were impeded by lower courts. Trump's tariffs were forecast to generate over the next decade trillions of dollars in revenue for the United States. Is it raining money? I don't see that, which possesses the world's largest economy. Trump's administration has not provided tariffs collection data since December 14th, but Penn Wharton budget model economists estimated today that on Friday that it's today. The amount collected in Trump's tariffs based on IEEPA stood at more than $175 billion. A far cry from trillions of dollars, and that amount likely would need to be refunded with a Supreme Court ruling against the IEEPA-based tariffs. The U.S. Constitution grants Congress, not the president, the authority to issue taxes and tariffs, but Trump instead turned to a statutory authority by invoking IEEPA to impose the tariffs on nearly every U.S. trading partner without the approval of Congress. Trump has imposed some additional tariffs under other laws that are not an issue in the case. Based on government data from October to mid-December, those represent about 1/3 of the revenue from Trump's imposed tariffs. IEEPA lets the president regulate commerce in a national emergency. Trump became the first president to use IEEPA to impose tariffs, one of the many ways he has aggressively pushed the boundaries of the executive authority since he returned to office in areas as varied as his crackdown on immigration, murdering U.S. citizens, the firing of federal agency officials, domestic military deployments, and military operations overseas. Trump described the tariffs as vital for U.S. economic security, predicting that the country would be defenseless and ruined without them. Trump in November told reporters that without his tariffs, the rest of the world would laugh at us because they've used tariffs against us for years and took advantage of us, and stuff. Trump said the United States was abused by other countries, including China, the second largest economy, soon to be the first, probably after all this bullshit. After the Supreme Court heard arguments in the case in November, Trump said he would consider alternatives if it ruled against him on tariffs, telling reporters that we'll have to develop a game 2 plan. What is he going to do? Is he just going to put like actual walls up at the border to keep imports from coming in? That's, I wouldn't be surprised. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and other administration officials said the U.S. would invoke other legal justifications to retain as many of Trump's tariffs as possible. Among others, these include a statutory provision that permits tariffs on imported goods that threaten U.S. national security. Take a drink. Take a drink. When you see threaten the national security, that's the drinking game. And another that allows retaliatory actions, including tariffs against trading partners that the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative determines have used unfair trade practices against American exporters. Let me guess. All these trade partners, all of them have, quote, used unfair trade practices against American exporters. Somehow, I bet you that's what's going to happen there. None of these alternatives offered the flexibility and blunt force dynamics that IEEPA provided Trump, and may not be able to replicate the full scope of his tariffs in a timely fashion. Trump's ability to impose tariffs instantaneously on any trading partner's goods under the aegis of some form of declared national emergency raised his leverage over other countries. It brought world leaders scrambling to Washington to secure trade deals that often included pledges of billions of dollars in investments. We call that extortion. Or other offers of enhanced market access for U.S. companies. But Trump's use of tariffs as a cudgel in U.S. foreign policy has succeeded in antagonizing numerous countries, including those long considered among the closest U.S. allies, except for Israel. IEEPA historically has been used for imposing sanctions on enemies or freezing their assets, not to impose tariffs. The law does not specifically mention the word tariffs. Trump's Justice Department had argued that IEEPA allows tariffs by authorizing the president to regulate imports to address emergencies. The Congressional Budget Office has estimated that if all current tariffs stay in place, including the IEEPA-based duties, they would generate about $300 billion annually over the next decade. Hardly trillions. Total U.S. net customs duty receipts reached a record $195 billion in fiscal 2025, which ended on September 30th, according to U.S. Treasury Department data. On April 2nd, on a date Trump labeled Liberation Day, the president announced what he called reciprocal tariffs on goods imported from most U.S. trading partners, invoking IEEPA to address what he called a national emergency related to U.S. trade deficits, though the U.S. already had run trade deficits for decades. In February and March of last year, Trump invoked IEEPA to impose tariffs on China, Canada, and Mexico, citing the trafficking of the often abused painkiller fentanyl, fentanyl, and illicit drugs into the U.S. as a national emergency. Trump has wielded his tariffs to extract concessions and renegotiate trade deals, and as a weapon to punish countries that draw his ire on non-trade political matters. These have ranged from Brazil's prosecution of former President Jair Bolsonaro, India's purchases of Russian oil that helped fund Russia's war in Ukraine, and an anti-tariffs ad by Canada's Ontario province. Ooh, a commercial. IEEPA was passed by Congress and signed by Democratic President Jimmy Carter. In passing the measure, Congress placed additional limits on the president's authority compared to a predecessor law. The cases on tariffs before the justices involved 3 lawsuits. The Washington-based U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit sided with 5 small businesses that import goods in one challenge, and the states of Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maine, Minnesota, Nevada, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, and Vermont in another. Separately, a Washington-based federal judge sided with a family-owned toy company called Learning Resources. So, a lot of this stuff only happens when you do lawsuits, right? I mean, I'm not one of those people that's like, that you should sue for every little thing, but, use the courts. I mean, in a case like this, where you got this asshole who thinks that they're going to be pulling in all this money and and all it does is drive up prices for everybody. I mean, it's pretty fucking stupid. So yeah, kudos to those folks who put those lawsuits together in those states too. So, and that's the thing. All this Trump bullshit, it's just all it does is tie up people's time in the courts, right? People have to sue, and eventually most of his stuff gets taken down. So, hey, Game.film, what's going on? Good to see you, man. Meanwhile, the Trump administration expands ICE power to detain legal refugees. Because you know what? Why not? Look, there's a legal refugee right there, but I bet he snuck in. Well, then he's not legal, stupid. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security, DHS, is expanding federal immigration authorities' power to detain legal refugees who have not obtained green cards within 1 year of their arrival, citing national security. Hey, take a drink. Drink. Man, you're going to get drunk before the third story's over. And public safety concerns. I think ICE is the public safety concern at this point. According to a DHS memo obtained by CNN and filed in federal court by Justice Department attorneys, immigration officers may now arrest and detain refugees who have failed to adjust to lawful permanent resident status 1 year after being admitted to the United States. The Wednesday memo states that refugee admission to the U.S. is conditional and subject to mandatory review after 1 year. When a refugee is admitted to the United States, the admission is conditional and subject to a mandatory review after 1 year, the memo reads. It adds that individuals who are detained may remain in custody for the duration of the inspection and examination process, aka indefinitely. The directive was issued by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services Director Joseph Edlow and acting U.S. ICE Enforcement Director Todd Lyons. Lyons, that's an appropriate name. It rescinds the previous department policy that did not treat failure to obtain a green card after 1 year as grounds for detention or removal. Under the prior framework, refugees who were arrested had to be released within 48 hours unless DHS initiated formal removal proceedings. The earlier policy also allowed refugees to remain in the country without detention while awaiting green card processing. The new memo introduces what it describes as a detain and inspect requirement, arguing that previous policy created a population of conditional refugees who had not been fully rescreened with associated public safety and national security risks. The updated approach, the memo states, ensures refugees are re-vetted after 1 year. It also notes that refugees may be considered to have voluntarily returned to custody by submitting application paperwork and attending scheduled appointments with immigration services. So yes, now refugees are no longer safe, which is kind of ironic because they came here for refuge, hence refugees, right? And now they're being detained. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. Well, here's a weird one. So apparently we're in another government shutdown right now, but not really. It's kind of weird how that works. As we get here, Democrats' White House still far from DHS funding deal amid standoff over ICE. And just so you know, this is the Department of Homeland Security, not ICE itself, because ICE is already funded $75 billion. They'll probably say it again here, but the standoff between Democrats and the White House over Department of Homeland Security funding and ICE continued on Wednesday with both sides digging in as the partial government shutdown hit its fifth day. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, called the counteroffer made by Democrats very unserious. That's a little projection right there. While House Minority Leader and Dollar Tree Seinfeld Hakeem Jeffries remained firm that Democrats would not back away from their demands for reform. Trump, who had said he would be personally involved in negotiations, hasn't yet spoken with Democrats, according to Leavitt. He hasn't had, is this her? He hasn't had any direct conversation or correspondence with Democrat lawmakers recently. It doesn't mean he's not willing to. I'm just not aware of any conversations that have taken place. She cackled to reporters at Wednesday's press briefing. There she is after drinking a nice Capri Sun laced with adrenochrome. Funding for DHS lapsed on Saturday, affecting agencies like the TSA, that's the Transportation Security Administration, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the people that deal with the aftermath of storms, U.S. Coast Guard, and the U.S. Secret Service. A majority of DHS employees are expected to work during the shutdown, though they could miss a paycheck. FEMA has paused almost all travel related to the agency's work, according to multiple sources familiar with the decision, though travel related to disaster relief will continue. These limitations are not a choice, but are necessary to comply with federal law. FEMA continues to coordinate closely with DHS to ensure effective disaster response. You're not really assuring that very much. Under these circumstances, a FEMA spokesperson said. U.S. ICE, which is at the center of the funding fight after two fatal shootings of American citizens by federal agents in Minneapolis, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection remain operational due to billion-dollar infusions from Trump's massive spending and tax cut bill passed by Republicans in Congress last summer. Hence the $75 billion. Democrats have asked for a range of new restrictions on immigration enforcement, including a mandate for body cameras, judicial warrants before agents can enter private property. Right now they're using executive warrants, which are issued by ICE, which are not judges. Yeah, rather than, and a ban on ICE agents wearing face masks. Oh, and how about stop murdering? The maybe that could be a concession too. Stop murdering. They also want stricter use of force policy and new training standards for agents. They employ bullies and people who were bullied, right? Just like cops. Same thing. These people who want power, and they want to lord their power over people who don't have power. The White House Democrats have traded offers over the past week, though the details haven't been released publicly. Both sides have called the other's proposals unserious. In fact, all of these people are unserious. That's probably the most truth you're going to get out of this. We've been engaged in good faith negotiations with the Democrats. They sent over a counter proposal that, frankly, was very unserious. And we hope they get serious very soon, because Americans are going to be impacted by this stuff. Leavitt cackled once again after she laid an egg. Jeffries said Wednesday the bill was in the White House's court. This is my best Jerry Seinfeld. We've reiterated our perspective on the types of things that are absolutely necessary in order for a DHS funding bill to move forward, all anchored in this principle that ICE needs to conduct itself like every other law enforcement agency. Wait a minute. Conduct itself like every other law enforcement agency? They murder people too in the country, and stop using taxpayer dollars to brutalize the American people, he said. And you want to be my latex salesman. Trump said on Sunday he didn't like some of what Democrats are asking for, and emphasized his administration is going to protect ICE. Yes, because they don't like straight drinks. They want it on ice. In the wake of the killings of Alex Preddy and Renee Good in Minneapolis during the administration's immigration crackdown and resulting protests, an ABC News review found multiple examples of public statements appearing to be inaccurate that the agency initially made after using force. Really? Inaccurate? What? They got something wrong? What? That's crazy talk. CBC voter. What's going on, buddy? Good to see you. One example occurred last month in Minneapolis when Julio Sosa Celis, a Venezuelan migrant, was shot in the leg by an ICE agent. At the time, DHS said its agents were violently assaulted with a shovel and broom handle. ABC News obtained a frantic 911 call made by a parent relative saying agents fired the shot as Sosa Celis ran away. Todd Lyons, the acting director of ICE, later said 2 of his agents appear to have made untruthful statements. Oh, what? ICE agents lying? That can't be true. I guess, ironically, that part is true, that they were lying about the moments before the shooting. Both officers were placed on administrative leave, and Lyons said they may face federal charges. They're not going to face federal charges. We all know that. Another case unfolded in Chicago last October when Miramar Martinez, an American citizen and teacher's assistant, was shot 5 times by federal agents. DHS initially said that the agents were forced to deploy their weapons. They were forced to, and fire defensive shots at an armed U.S. citizen after their SUV was rammed by vehicles and boxed in by 10 cars. But an ABC News analysis of video footage shows that agents were being followed by 2, not 10 vehicles, and that at no time was their vehicle blocked from the front. A CBP spokesperson said in a statement that the officer who shot Martinez was placed on administrative leave, probably paid, following the incident, and the Department of Justice dropped the charges against Martinez. So, yeah. So it's funny. A lot of this is just a dog and pony show. The Democrats trying to puff out their chest and act like they're doing something when, in fact, there's really nothing they can do to ICE. It's not like they can keep their funding. They've already been funded. So this may be, like I said, this is probably just some sort of theater to help boost their chances of winning in November for the midterms. I don't know. It all just seems just like some dumb shit. Hey, Yonina, good to see you, Yonina. Meanwhile, we got some stuff brewing in Iran. Of course, the war drums are beating, even though Trump said, "I'm a president of peace." PIECE. Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie pushed to block Trump's ability to strike Iran without congressional consent. Okay. Trumpy appears poised to launch a massive war with Iran. Khanna and Thomas Massie say they will attempt to force the House to vote on a war powers resolution next week after Congress returns from recess. Trump officials say there's a 90% chance of strikes on Iran. He can't without Congress, Khanna wrote Wednesday night on social media following reports of a massive U.S. military mobilization toward the Middle East. Hang on a second. There we go. He said that he and Massie have a war powers resolution to debate and vote on before putting U.S. troops in harm's way, adding, "I will make a motion to discharge, to force a vote." On the next week's force a vote! Force a vote! I'm always triggered by that phrase now. On it next week. So, yes, Ro Khanna, the Dollar Tree, Ray Romano. Trump officials say that's 90%. All right, we already did that. It's not the first time that the Progressive and the Libertarian, which is a TV show on Lifetime channel, you'll see it this Sunday night, have teamed up in an attempt to place a check on the White House, including Trump's ability to attack Iran. In June, days after Trump launched strikes against 3 Iranian nuclear sites amid the nation's 12-day war with Israel, the pair co-sponsored a resolution along with 75 other representatives to require congressional approval for any further military actions. However, the bill stalled out after a ceasefire between Iran and Israel was reached. This time, however, a full-scale war appears much more likely. Trump is positioning 2 aircraft carriers, a dozen warships, and hundreds of fighter jets to prepare for a possible war with Iran, Khanna said. A war with Iran would be catastrophic. Iran is a complex society of 90 million people with significant air defenses. They have those hypersonic missiles, so the Navy's probably going to be toast. And military capabilities. We also have 30 to 40,000 U.S. troops in the region who could be at risk of retaliation. Congress must do its job and stop this march to war. Massey emphasized that Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution gives Congress the explicit authority to declare war. Under the 1973 War Powers Resolution, the president is allowed to deploy military force without authorization from Congress, but only in narrow circumstances when there is a national emergency created by an attack upon the United States. This is why we were able to go into Iraq and Afghanistan when Bush Jr., when W was president. It's terrorism. They say it's terrorism. We got to go get them. But this isn't terrorism because they haven't attacked the United States. In this case, however, Massey said there's no imminent threat from Iran to invoke this exception in the 1973 War Powers Act. A discharge petition, which would force a War Powers resolution onto the floor for a vote, even without approval from the Republican majority, would require 218 members of the House. It would not be the first War Powers resolution to reach a floor vote. Multiple resolutions to rein in Trump's ability to strike boats in the Caribbean and to wage war on Venezuela have come up just short in recent months. I don't see that pattern differing in this case either. In January, weeks after Trump's operation to overthrow Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and commandeer the nation's oil, a resolution requiring him to seek congressional approval for U.S. military presence there failed by a vote of 215 to 215. I guess that should be 214. 215 to 214. Just one yes vote short of pass, or maybe 214. I'm not sure. That's weird. Just one vote, because that would be 430. I don't know how that is. Just one yes vote short of passing in the House. So where a deadlock means legislation cannot be approved. So I guess it is I guess it is 215 to 215. Massey was joined by one other Republican, Don Bacon. Bacon. Not related to Kevin Bacon, I don't think, in crossing party lines to vote with Democrats. Another prominent Republican critic of Trump's warmongering, former Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, had also joined in voting for previous War Powers resolutions. However, she resigned from her seat in early January amid a falling out with Trump. If all 213 Democrats vote in favor of a discharge position, it's unclear which 3 Republicans might join Massey and Bacon to pass it. To take effect, the bill would also have to pass the GOP-controlled Senate. Dun, dun, dun. One moment, please. Come on, what are you doing here? Okay. All right. Is that what happened? Okay. Congress is currently on recess and will not return until Monday, by which time a war may already have begun. However, Khanna said the vote is still important. Yeah. If Trump is preparing to bomb Iran soon and others call for troops on the ground, Congress must get on the record so Americans know where their representatives stand. Yeah, Don Bacon is typically his scumbag, so this must be. Yeah, I know. When you even when the scumbags are like, this is just too scummy for me, you know it's bad. Polls suggest that a war with Iran is overwhelmingly unpopular with the American people. A YouGov survey from early February found that 48% said they strongly or somewhat oppose military action in Iran, compared with just 28% who supported it and 24% who weren't sure. Like the votes before the Iraq war, this could be one of the most consequential votes in the history of Congress, Khanna said. Are we going to stop another endless dumb foreign war, or will the neoconservatives mislead us once again? I'm going to say the latter. The Trump administration has provided little in the way of a public justification for a new war with Iran, while Democratic leadership has been criticized for failing to forcefully stand against it. The American public hasn't even gotten a semblance of a rationale from Trump as to why we have to attack Iran now. Israel. Israel. God, man, I just really need this drink. Sorry about that. I think a lot of the public is starting to figure that out. Said Nathan Thompson, a senior policy advisor at Just Foreign Policy. Congress needs to call up a war powers vote and do its job immediately to stop this disaster from unfolding. Yes, they do. But will they? Probably not. If I was a betting man, I would say no dice, precious. That ain't gonna happen. So this threatening this war. What I was talking to my buddy Ed about this. How ironic this is. Trump threatens war with Iran at his first Board of Peace meeting. We're reminded of the example from Dr. Strangelove. He said, "Gentlemen, stop fighting. Stop fighting. This is the war room," or something like that. Trump yesterday convened the first meeting of his so-called Board of Peace, a body he formed to oversee the Gaza ceasefire, which Israel continues to violate because they're Board of Peace. Sorry, I stole that from Kevin, B-O-R-E-D, from Black Bear News. Shout out to Black Bear News. And appeared to threaten that a U.S. attack on Iran could come within 10 days. 10 days. In a speech at the meeting, Trump referenced his June 2025 attack on Iran, which targeted the country's nuclear facilities. Anonymous. Good to see you, bud. Been a minute. Hope you're doing well. Across the pond there. Now we may have to take it a step further, or we may not. Maybe we're going to make a deal. You're going to be finding out over the next probably 10 days or so and type of thing. Trump also said that Iran must make a deal. If that doesn't happen, bad things will happen. You mean like bad things haven't been happening? Please. The president convened the Board of Peace while overseeing what the Wall Street Journal has described as the largest gathering of U.S. air power in the region since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. The U.S. has sent a second aircraft carrier to the Middle East and deployed dozens of additional fighter jets there in recent days. While Trump claims Iran has the opportunity to make a deal with the U.S., it's unclear what sort of agreement he would accept, and his administration hasn't made a coherent case for why it needs to attack the country. He hasn't made a coherent statement, period. In his remarks on Thursday, Trump said Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, but for months he insisted the U.S. airstrikes obliterated Iran's nuclear facilities, and there's no sign Tehran is even capable of enriching uranium at the moment. According to the New York Times, Iran has suggested it's willing to suspend nuclear enrichment for 3 to 5 years and then enter a regional consortium to enrich civilian-grade uranium, an arrangement that would give Tehran no path to a nuclear weapon. The U.S.'s real goal with Iran is likely either regime change or removing Iran's ability to strike Israel. Probably both. Israeli officials have demanded that any deal must include restrictions on Iran's missiles. Those hypersonic missiles that will just fuck up their Iron Dome bullshit. A condition Tehran would never accept since its missiles are its only form of deterrence and way to launch counterattacks if it's bombed by the U.S. or Israel. So they are deathly afraid of Iran getting nukes, not because that Iran would use the nukes, but because Iran would then be able to defend themselves and exist. And then you couldn't coup them and you couldn't attack them. So that's why they're attacking them now. So I would think Iran should just say, fuck, you know what, fuck it, we're going to get nukes. How about that? How you like me now? Bitch, we're going to get them nukes. The old Streisand effect. If they had just left them alone, everything would have been fine, but no. No siree, Bob. So at this Board of Peace bullshit, this Board of Peace bullshit, U.S. plans to build a 5,000 person military base in Gaza for international force. So And Trump said on Thursday that the U.S. will also contribute $10 billion to the so-called Board of Peace. That fucking Amway scheme. The Trump administration is planning to build a 5,000-person military base inside Gaza, The Guardian reported yesterday, citing contracting records from the so-called Board of Peace. Piece of ass. The report said that the base would take up more than 350 acres of land in southern Gaza and is envisioned as a future base for the international force that may deploy to the Strip under Trump's plan for the Palestinian territory, though so far only Indonesia has announced plans to commit troops to the force. And let's just face it, nobody gives a fuck what Indonesia says. I mean, really? People, the Indonesians, like, fuck you. All right, fair enough. The Guardian said that the plans it reviewed call for the phased construction of a military outpost that will eventually have a footprint of 1,400 meters by 1,100 meters, ringed by 26 trailer-mounted armored watchtowers. That sounds like a prison to me. A small arms range, bunkers, and a warehouse for military equipment for operations. The entire base will be encircled with barbed wire. There'll probably be a moat with alligators in it, or piranha. The contracting document includes protocol for what happens if construction teams come across human remains, since the bodies of at least 8,000 Palestinians are still missing under the rubble. If suspected human remains or cultural artifacts are discovered, all work in the immediate area must cease immediately. The area must be secured, and the contracting officer must be notified immediately for direction, the document says. It's unclear how much the base would cost to build, but earlier reports suggested the U.S. was planning to construct a major military facility on the Gaza border at a cost of between $500 and $600 million. Trump convened his first Board of Peace meeting in Washington on Thursday, which came as Israel continues to violate the ceasefire deal, killing more than 600,000 Palestinians in the Strip since it was signed. At the event, Trump pledged that the U.S. would contribute $10 billion to the board, basically to him, is what that means. Under Trump's plan for Gaza, the international force is supposed to replace IDF soldiers, wink, 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 who continue to occupy more than 50% of the Strip. But there's no timeline on when that would happen, and Israel is threatening to restart its full-scale genocidal war if Hamas doesn't disarm, right? And Hamas said, fuck you, we're not going to disarm. They've been saying that this whole time. They're not going to disarm. So why would they do it now? Because they know Israel is full of fuckery. That's why. In fact, Hamas condemns Trump's Board of Peace meeting, calls for immediate halt to Israeli aggression. Ugh. This guy with the fez, what the hell? The Palestinian resistance movement, Hamas, has strongly condemned the convening of Gaza's so-called Board of Peace in the U.S. In a statement issued yesterday, Hamas affirmed that any political path or arrangements regarding Gaza must be based on a complete halt to Israeli aggression. The resistance movement also reaffirmed the need to lift the siege of Gaza and guarantee Palestinians' right to freedom and self-determination. Hamas criticized the session's convening amid the ongoing Israeli crimes in the war-torn territory. The convening of this session amid the ongoing crimes of the occupation and its continuous violations of the ceasefire agreement obligates the international community and the parties participating in the board to take practical steps that compel the occupation to halt its aggression, open the crossings, allow the unimpeded entry of humanitarian aid, and immediately start the reconstruction, Hamas said. The resistance movement called on mediators to ensure the implementation of the ceasefire agreement and prevent Israel from obstructing the deal. Hamas warned that any genuine international effort to achieve stability in Gaza must address the root cause of the problem, the Israeli occupation, and enable Palestinians to attain their complete rights. Earlier in the day, U.S. President Donald Trump, my Freudian slip is showing. Early in the day, Trump chaired the inaugural meeting of his so-called Board of Peace in Washington at the U.S. Institute of Peace. The Institute of Peace. Please. More like the House of Pancakes. The gathering focused primarily on advancing the next phase of a fragile ceasefire in Gaza, post-war reconstruction, and related elements of Trump's broader 20-point peace plan for the region. Member nations committed over $7 billion towards Gaza relief and reconstruction, with Trump announcing the $10 billion we told you about. Participating countries were credited for these pledges. Some countries pledged troops for a proposed international stabilization force for Gaza, like Indonesia, I think was the only one they said. Outside Trump's so-called Board of Peace meeting, demonstrators gathered to denounce Washington's role in enabling the genocide in Gaza. Many protesters shouted "Free Palestine," demanding an end to the decades-long occupation of Palestine. They also called for an end to U.S. complicity in the genocide in Gaza and the punishment of Israeli war criminals. At one point, individuals wearing masks depicting Trump, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a.k.a. Aquaman, were pushed to the ground and detained by police. Because that's right. You see the police, they want ICE to be more in line with the police. Well, this is what the fucking police are doing. The Board of Peace was formally launched by Trump at a signing ceremony in Davos, Switzerland on January 22nd this year. Trump has described it as an initiative aimed at stabilizing and rebuilding Gaza following the ceasefire that took effect as part of his plan in October of last year. The board is chaired by Trump and includes key members such as U.S. Secretary of State Aquaman, Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff, the U.S. President's son-in-law Jared Kushner, former Prime Minister Tony Blair, Bozo the Clown, Ed Gein, and anybody else you want to throw in there. Many goals outlined in Trump's 20-point plan have not fully materialized on the ground. Shocking. Phase 1 was intended to immediately halt fighting, facilitate the exchange of Israeli captives and Palestinian prisoners, establish boundaries for Israeli withdrawal from parts of Gaza, enable unrestricted humanitarian aid entry, and reopen the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt. Although the daily intensity of Israeli attacks has decreased during the ceasefire, since the ceasefire began, the Israeli military has still killed more than 600 Palestinians and injured over 1,600 others since the conclusion of the ceasefire, averaging nearly 5 deaths per day, according to Palestinian officials. Yeah, Board of Peace. Dumb shit, right? Well, you know, as we stay in the Middle East, Russia and China are not standing pat, which is always a good thing. And, you know, I do like a good fez. I wouldn't mind wearing a fez, but I don't want to wear a fez and piss off somebody that they're like, hey, you're not a Shriner. You're not one of these people that wear fezes. Why are you wearing fezes? I like fezes. What can I say? Russia, China, Iran deploy ships for joint exercises in the Strait of Hormuz. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. That bird said, fuck this shit. I am out. I am Audi 5000 with a sunroof. Remember that phrase? People would say, I'm Audi 5000. Just me? Russia, China, and Iran have deployed naval vessels for joint exercises in the Strait of Hormuz, Russian presidential aide Nikolai Patrushev said on Tuesday. Oh boy, here come the names. In an interview with the weekly Argumenti Fakti, Patrushev said Russia is working to build a multipolar world order on the oceans in response to what he called Western hegemony. We will tap into the potential of BRICS, which should now be given a full-fledged strategic maritime dimension, he said. He added that the first BRICS naval exercise, dubbed Will for Peace 2026, was held in January in the South Atlantic and involved Russia, China, Iran, the United Arab Emirates, and South Africa. Peace stuff. That's right, joint exercises. I know, right? I like joint exercises too. You know, you stretch your arm and then you pass the joint and then you stretch your arm. That's joint. According to Patrushev, it's a fun name to say, participating navies practice coordinating efforts to protect trade routes, which he said are becoming increasingly vulnerable. The Maritime Security Belt 2026 exercises in the Strait of Hormuz, where Russia, China, and Iran sent their ships, proved to be relevant, he added. The Maritime Security Belt is set to be hosted by Iran in mid-February in the Strait of Hormuz, which is where we're at now, which lies between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, one of the world's most strategically important choke points, according to the semi-official Tasnim news agency. TNA, we know what that means. The joint naval drills were first launched in 2019 at the initiative of Iran's Navy and have been held 7 times since then. Banging the drums of war. So yeah, when BRICS said is more of an economic thing, but they had been talking about like NATO, let's have our own forces as well. So this will be interesting to see what happens there. And of course, if you need to buy gas, ain't nothing better than a war with Iran to make those gas prices much higher. Laine P, what's up? If you're not subscribed to the Undercurrent, by the way, link is down below. If you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be cool. We do a show on Wednesday mornings, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Good stuff for you. Again, the link's in the description. So oil prices jump amid signs of U.S.-Iran conflict. So yeah, here's the chart, and it's like, look, those oil prices are too low. Let's start a war and jack it back up. Oil prices jumped to their highest levels since last summer amid growing signs the U.S. is preparing a military strike against Iran. Why it matters, the market sees risks to both Iranian exports, but also a conflict that could threaten other supplies from the oil-producing region. Prices climbed well over 4% on Wednesday and were rising again yesterday. The global benchmark Brent crude is at over $71 per barrel, while the U.S. standard WTI is around $66. For oil markets, the concern is clearly what action would mean not only for Iranian oil supply, but also broader Persian Gulf oil flows, given the risk of disruption to shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. ING analysts said in a note on Wednesday. I thought ING went out, or maybe I'm thinking of something else. Iran exports about 1.5 million barrels per day, mostly to China, but the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow sea passage next to Iran, is a choke point that handles a whopping 1/4 or so of the world's maritime oil trade. Right now, there's lots of supply sloshing around what's a pretty soft market marked by modest demand growth and rising output. These conditions, and hence rather modest U.S. gasoline prices, expand Trump's geopolitical running room. Geopolitical issues, above all, Iran, are the key bullshit. I thought that said bullshit. You might as well say it. Are the key bullish factor in the oil market at the moment. University of Texas Austin energy analyst Bill Cahill told Axios. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot of price support towards $70 per barrel. The slack in this market could embolden the White House, he said. RBC Capital Markets analysts say there's limited short-term capacity to replace potentially the lost barrels if fighting breaks out. We continue to contend that the only meaningful spare capacity is sitting in Saudi Arabia, and if OPEC does decide to bring forward more production in the spring, the cupboard will be exceedingly bare if there are any major supply disruptions stemming from a U.S.-Iran conflict, they said in a new note. Oil analyst Clayton Siegel of the Center for Strategic and International Studies has mapped out several conflict scenarios and how they could affect prices. For instance, if the U.S. or Israel blockade Iranian shipments, but its export infrastructure remains intact, he sees a potential and reversible $10 to $12 per barrel increase, but attacking those facilities would cause a larger rise. Iran could attempt to disrupt flows through the Strait of Hormuz, which could see prices rise above $90 per barrel, sending U.S. average gasoline prices well above $3 per gallon. Remember that? They're currently around $2.93 per AAA. A more extreme case could see Iran attacking oil infrastructure like wells and export terminals in major Gulf-producing countries, which could bring a historic spike to the $130 per barrel range, he writes. How U.S. domestic politics factor into the scope and duration of the conflict is if the White House indeed attacks Iran, given Trump's aversion to higher gasoline prices. Right. So, yeah, so this is, I guess that's what Axios was looking at. Not a big fan of Axios, but sometimes, you know, broken clock, that kind of thing. Yeah, so we saw this in the Gulf War, too, if you're old enough to remember that. Those gas prices stay way up, remember? And then oil dropped, but the gasoline prices were still high. Fun stuff, right? Isn't it? Isn't it fun stuff? Yeah. So, yeah, there's always layers when it comes to, you know, attacking another country like that, right? A lot of it's optics, a lot of it's chest thumping, but then, you know, people start having to, you know, pay higher gas prices. Yeah, I saw that. I didn't really want to report on that because it wasn't like they put him in some holding cell or anything. They kind of briefly detained him, but, you know, yeah, so he was detained in Israel for like 5 minutes. There's probably some bullshit. So meanwhile, the UK putting on their big boy pants as the UK refuses to let the US use its bases for strikes on Iran. Come on. Yeah, let's use your bases. No, let's use your bases. No, I want to use your bases. No. My British no. The UK has not agreed on the U.S. using its Air Force bases for possible military strikes on Iran, which in turn prompted President Trumpy to be very spicy and vindictive, to withdraw his support for the former's deal to hand over the Chagos Island to Mauritius. British daily The Times reported on Thursday, The White House is drawing up detailed military plans for a strike against Iran involving the use of both Diego Garcia and Royal Air Force Fairford in Gloucestershire, Worcestershire, which is home to America's fleet of heavy bombers in Europe, the report said. It added that under UK-US agreements, said U.S. bases can only be used for military operations that have been agreed on in advance with the UK government. The president spoke to the prime minister on Tuesday night, and the two men discussed Trump's ultimatum to Iran over its nuclear program. The following day, Trump made his statement attacking the Chagos deal, the report said. Iran has been the scene of anti-government protests in December and January that were violently quashed by the government. Tehran puts the death toll at over 3,000, while activists operating from abroad warn that it could be much higher. It blames foreign interference by the U.S. and Israel for its protests. What? Why would they interfere and coup you and try and like do regime change things in the Glyphosate and the Hoyven? Since the beginning of the protest, Trump has threatened to take military measures against Tehran and ordered 2 aircraft carriers into striking range. The U.S. and Iran have held bilateral talks over Iran's nuclear program twice, but to no avail. No avail. No avail. No Vicky Vale. No avail. Get over here. Yeah, so I don't know if Keir Starmer is getting internal pressure as to like, we don't want to be a part of this bullshit. We don't, you know, this is Iraq. This is Iraq all over again. Fuck that. So I don't know. They seem very milquetoast anyway. They might probably just cave at some point and go, okay, you can use our bases. Speaking of the UK, old ex-Prince Andrew released after arrest over alleged misconduct in office. Look at that, man. He just looks evil, doesn't he? He just looks like somebody made an evil mask for him and just plastered it to his face permanently. Andrew Mountbatten wins. The UK's former royal has been released from police custody after his arrest on suspicion of misconduct in public office over allegations he sent confidential government documents to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Mountbatten Windsor, who turned 66 on Thursday, had been questioned throughout the day by detectives from Thames Valley Police. Earlier this month, the police force said it was looking into allegations that he had passed documents to Epstein while working as a trade envoy. King Charles II said after the arrest that morning that the law must take its course. He does not like his brother. Police officers were investigating him for several allegations that emerged after U.S. authorities released more than 3 million pages of documents relating to the disgraced financial pedophile. Some of those files suggested that Mountbatten Windsor had, in 2010, forwarded to Epstein reports about Vietnam, Singapore, and other places he had visited on official trips as UK trade envoy. In one confidential memo, he sought Epstein's views on investment opportunities in Afghanistan's Helmand province. Assistant Chief Constable Oliver Wright said, following a thorough assessment, we have now opened an investigation into this allegation of misconduct in public office. Chip, chip, Perio, cheerio, pip, pip, cheerio. Why did I say chip, chip, perio? It's important that we protect the integrity and objectivity of our investigation as we work with our partners to investigate this alleged offense. We understand the significant public interest in the case, and we will provide updates at the appropriate time. Mountbatten Windsor should cooperate with the U.S. authorities in their investigation, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said. No one is above the law, he added. Mountbatten Windsor has consistently denied any wrongdoing. This girl's like, bitch, I know you guilty as fuck. He's like, yes, sir. He sure is. Like a little puppet, little clutch cargo thing there. Put the mouths in there. Yeah, so, and this is part of like, people around the world who are, especially here in the United States, who's like, yes, more please. Can we have more people investigated instead of just like releasing these names and then throwing our hands up and going, oopsie sauce, I don't know what else to do. No, well, it's just like, what's his face? The guy who was the ambassador of the United States for the UK. It's all financial stuff. It's like, shit, what's his name in Chicago? Al Capone. They couldn't get him on all this murder and all this other stuff. They got him on like tax evasion. And then he died in prison of syphilis, I think. Or maybe I'm thinking of something else. I know. Are we going to see any justice from any of these fuckers? Probably not. I mean, let's be honest. We know how the world works. I know that sounds very cynical, but it's pretty realistic. Is it really? Okay. I thought it was 1 o'clock. I'm like, Jesus, we've been going that long. So Canada is getting off of the military teat from the U.S. apparently, as Canadian Prime Minister unveils unprecedented defense plan to curb reliance on the U.S. The Canadian government has announced a major new defense plan aimed at reducing reliance on Washington, which the country's premier said was no longer viable. We've relied too heavily on our geography and others to protect us, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said on Tuesday. This has created vulnerabilities that we can no longer afford and dependencies that we can no longer sustain, he went on to say. A statement from the Prime Minister's office said the new defense industrial strategy amounts to an investment of over $500 billion. I don't think that's over, $500 billion Canadian dollars, and 366 billion U.S. currency in Canadian security, economic prosperity, and our sovereignty. The scale of new funding is unprecedented, said the Vice President of Canada's Chamber of Commerce, David Pearce. He praised Carney for making a big bet on Canada while stressing that the plan will be measured by whether the funding results in a stronger Canadian army. The announcement coincides with a significant strain in relations between Washington and Ottawa. That's the capital of Canada. Carney strongly criticized U.S. policy under Trump at the World Economic Forum last month. The Canadian premier said at the forum that the international rules-based order is in the middle of a rupture and warned that great powers are weaponizing tariffs and supply chains. Well, apparently the tariffs, maybe not so much now. We'll see about that. Trump fired back and said Canada lives because of the U.S. What? Canada was here before the U.S. Because England. It was immigration lawyer and global affairs expert Aiden J. Simmer down now. Wrote for the Cradle last month that Trump's expansionist policies, particularly his vow to take Greenland, could potentially extend towards Canada, given Washington's historically hostile treatment of the country. Decades ago, the U.S. military drafted a plan for an invasion of Canada, dubbed War Plan Red. The plan may have been shelved, but the instincts behind it never did, Simmerdone said, wrote. It's also the synopsis of that movie, Canadian Bacon. I highly, it's like Idiocracy before Idiocracy came out. So if you see Canadian Bacon, John Candy, I think Alan Alda's the president. I'm not quite sure. I think he's in it. He explains that 2/3 of Canada's population live within 100 kilometers of the U.S. border, making a swift attack and occupation more feasible. Additionally, the U.S. military hardware, which Canada relies on, could be sabotaged. I'm telling all y'all, it's sabotage. Reports have also said that Washington has been meeting with Canadian separatists seeking a breakaway state of Alberta in an effort to destabilize its neighbor. Trump has repeatedly threatened to annex Canada and make it the 51st state. A new Politico poll, we'll tell you about this in a second. According to officials cited by the Globe and Mail last month, Canadian forces are preparing military contingency plans to prepare for a U.S. attack on the country. Never in my lifetime did I ever think that we would ever attack Canada, but here we are. The plan assumes Washington would take key land and sea positions within a week and calls on Canadian forces to adopt unconventional insurgency tactics and guerrilla warfare. And in other words, yeah, you might be able to secure the border, but the rest of Canada is just wilderness and moose and people with guns. Just think like what is that, the mountain range in West Virginia. Just think about that area, only like a whole big ass country. The model includes tactics used by the Afghan Mujahideen in their hit and run attacks on Russian soldiers during the 1979-1989 Soviet-Afghan War. These were the same tactics employed by the Taliban in their 20-year war against the U.S. and allied forces that included Canada, an unnamed senior official told the outlet. And let's not forget Vietnam. What is this? I'm still in court, so I can't hear you. You could be cussing me out. And fuck you, Yonina. I'm not cussing you out. But yeah, that's the thing. You can't take over countries anymore. People will, unless it's like a teeny, tiny country. Right? And even with what's going on in Venezuela. Yeah, they stole Maduro, they kidnapped him, but worst comes to worst, those people will rise up, in the jungles and stuff, and it'll be Vietnam once again. So speaking of Canada and U.S. relations, they hit new low. How about that? That's stunning, right? He goes, "You're a bitch, eh?" He goes, "You're a bitch, eh?" Wait a minute, I'm not Canadian. What am I saying, eh? More than a year after Trumpy's remarks about absorbing Canada and repeated threats of steep tariffs, new polling suggests a sharp deterioration in how Canadians view their southern neighbor. A survey conducted by Politico in partnership with UK-based polling firm Public First found that Canadians increasingly see the U.S. as a destabilizing global force rather than a reliable ally. While Americans continue to express positive views towards Canada, the sentiment is not reciprocated. I know, I love Canada. Canada, you know, you got Molson, you got maple syrup, you know, you have poutine. Ooh, poutine. Oh, with the potatoes and the gravy and then a little cheese. According to the findings, 58% of Canadian respondents said the U.S. is not a reliable ally, the highest share among those surveyed in Canada, Germany, France, and the U.K. A 42% plurality said the U.S. is no longer an ally of Canada, while 37% says it remains one. Right. The poll also found that 57% of Canadians believe the U.S. cannot be depended on in a crisis. Meanwhile, 67% said Washington challenges rather than supports its allies, and 69%, nice, agreed that the U.S. tends to create problems for other countries instead of solving them. That number should be higher than 69, but I'm glad it's 69 so I can be use my 13-year-old brain and giggity. In assessing global stability, 43% of Canadians described the U.S. as mostly a threat, while 34% said it's sometimes a force for stability, sometimes a threat. Nearly half of respondents, 48%, identified the U.S. as the greatest threat to peacetime. Well, they're the ones starting all the wars, aren't they? A 19-point lead over Russia, which ranked second at 29%. Stephanie spoken class today. What's up, Steph? I saw you the other night on ExtraBulla Live when I had Abby and Michael on. It was good to see you. Go Start. Good to see you too, pal. Hope you're doing well. So more than 2/3 of Canadians believe Trump is actively seeking conflict with other countries, according to the latest findings from Politico in partnership with Public First. The perception is particularly strong among Liberal voters who propelled Prime Minister Mark Carney to a fourth consecutive victory for the party last year. Supporters of the new Democratic Party expressed even stronger agreement that the U.S. president is pursuing confrontations abroad. Among conservative voters, traditionally supportive of those of close ties with Washington, views were more divided. Still, a 57% majority said the U.S. president appears to be looking around the world for a fight. Naybones. What's up, Naybones? Good to see you, kid. Concerns over U.S. foreign policy extend more broadly, with 47% of Canadians saying American involvement overseas makes the world less safe, the survey found. During the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, Canadians expressed deep mistrust towards Beijing, with public opinion reaching a low point in 2021. A survey conducted that year by research company found that only 19% of Canadians held a positive view of China, reflecting widespread skepticism at the time. The Politico poll, however, suggests a marked shift in attitudes amid deteriorating relations with Washington under Trump. 57% of Canadians surveyed said they would rather depend on China than on the United States. And see, that's why China doesn't do anything. They just, I'm not really defending China, but you know, I'm not gonna shit on them either. It is what it is. They build all this infrastructure in their own country and other countries. They're not waging war. So it's just like, hey man, we're just trying to help you out, bro. We're not the ones going pew, 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 pew. So, you know, and they're the second largest economy, which will probably be the first pretty soon. Yeah, I had a good time with them. Abby and Michael, they're good people. Tuesdays and Thursdays, check out Noteworthy with them. They do an open forum on Tuesdays, those mega long streams, but they're so good. When asked whether Canada should deliberately move closer to China, 39% agreed. Of those respondents, 60% cited Trump directly as the reason for supporting stronger ties across the Pacific. Canadian travel to the U.S. has declined sharply since the inauguration of Trump, according to new polling data. Many Canadian tourists are choosing alternative destinations, while seasonal snowbirds who traditionally spend winters in states such as Florida and Arizona are reportedly seeking other warm weather options. Well, Florida is just batshit. They're just batshit crazy. They're probably avoiding that for that reason alone. Yeah, that's exactly it. China winning just by chilling. Yeah, that's what you do. You sit back and let the other person act a fool and act crazy and stuff, and then you go, would you rather have this or this? That's the way you do it. The survey found that 41% of Canadians believe Trump represents a lasting shift in the bilateral relationship. However, 49% said they expect ties between the U.S. and Canada to recover once he leaves office. Well, unless J.D. Vance is in there, I wouldn't count on it, Canada. That optimism cuts across party lines among liberal voters. 51% said the relationship would rebound in a post-Trump era, compared with 50% of the conservatives and 46% of supporters of the New Democratic Party. That's in Canada, not here. There is no New Democratic Party. There's just the old shitty one. Still, nearly 3 in 10 Canadians, 29%, said they believe the damage is permanent and that there is no returning to the previous state of relations between the two countries. No. And it's probably not just Canada either, right? The United States is pissing off everybody. And it didn't start with Trump. Our foreign policy has fucked up so many places. And then people complain about the immigration, influx. And it's like, well, why do you think these people are coming here? They're getting away from these countries that the United States helped fuck up. So at least we could do is help them out, right? Yeah, so we were talking about Venezuela earlier, maybe. I don't know. I can't remember. Head of U.S. Southern Command visits Venezuela, meets with acting President Rodriguez. General Francis L. Donovan, the head of U.S. Southern Command, or SOCOM, visited Venezuela on Wednesday and met with Venezuelan acting President Delcy Rodriguez, a visit that came less than 2 months after the U.S. attacked Venezuela and straight up stole President Nicolas Maduro. According to a press release from Rodriguez's office, during the meeting, both sides agreed to a cooperation agenda to combat drug trafficking and migration. It was emphasized that the diplomatic path is crucial for resolving differences and addressing issues of common interest. Southcom, I say SOCOM, this should be Southcom. Southcom said that Donovan had productive meetings with Venezuelan interim authorities and was joined by Acting Assistant Secretary of War Joseph Humire and Laura Dogu, the top U.S. diplomat in Venezuela, who took her post at the end of January, part of the Trump administration's effort to reopen its embassy in Caracas. There's the album cover right there. The administration is pursuing a policy aimed at controlling Venezuela's oil trade and increasing its crude exports, and the country has seen a series of visits from U.S. officials in recent weeks to advance this agenda, including CIA Director John Ratcliffe. The CIA, right? You know, if it stinks, it's probably the CIA. And Energy Secretary Chris Wright, who recently toured oil sites with Rodriguez. Rodriguez has maintained that Maduro is the rightful president of Venezuela and is calling for his release, but she is obliged to U.S. demands regarding Venezuela's oil, demands that were made under the threat of another attack. According to a report from the Gray Zone, a pro-opposition Venezuelan journalist has said that the U.S. Department of Justice has crafted an indictment against Rodriguez to hold over her head. The January 3rd attack on Venezuela killed at least 83 people, including 47 Venezuelan troops, 32 Cuban soldiers, and 4 civilians. Since the operation, Southcom has continued its bombing campaign against small boats it claims are running drugs in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific Ocean, of course, murdering people in plain sight, the way they've been doing. Where are we at here? Okay. So we stay in the global south as strike over labor reforms bring Argentina's capital to a near standstill. Good for them. Argentina, man, that place. A strike has ground much of Argentina's capital, Buenos Aires, to a halt as businesses close and demonstrators take to the streets to protest against President Javier Milei's proposed labor reforms. That's what we call shut it down. Businesses close. Shut it down. Thursday's 24-hour general strike was the fourth of Milei's term as president, though smaller strikes have also been a regular occurrence since he took office in 2023. As a result of the protests, subways were shuttered in Buenos Aires, fewer bus lines were running, and Aerolíneas Argentinas, the scientific name for their state airline apparently, anticipated canceling 255 flights at a loss of $300 million. Even banks and schools were closed in solidarity with the strike. Banks would close here. They're like, bitch, please. One of Argentina's largest unions, the General Confederation of Labor, or the GCL, or whatever they say down there, called on citizens to show their opposition to the labor reform in the streets, in Congress, in the courts, and in every workplace. If they attack workers' rights, they attack national industry and the future of the country, the union wrote in a social media post. Rights are not negotiable. The general strike coincides with Argentina's Chamber of Deputies debating the labor reforms on Thursday. Milei, a libertarian politician, had campaigned on slashing regulations that he felt inhibited Argentina's economy. Billionaires, famously wielding a chainsaw at rallies to illustrate his hardline approach. His party, the right-wing La Libertad Avanza, has pushed a package of labor reforms that critics argue would weaken worker rights, reduce the number of jobs available, and set back the quality of life in the country. The labor reform bill includes provisions to make it easier for companies to fire employees, as well as to reduce severance pay. It would also lengthen the standard workday from 8 hours to 12, and the right to strike would be curtailed in part through an expansion in the definition of what constitutes essential work. Loopholes. The Milei administration has argued that the measures are necessary to attract foreign investment and increase profitability by doing away with cumbersome labor restrictions, like paying people what they're worth and not working them to death. What the hell's up with that, right? Argentina's ailing economy has long been a point of tension in Argentina, and at the time of Milei's election, inflation had crested past 200%. Milei, however, has the backing of U.S. President Donald Trump, of course, a fellow right-wing leader who he was visiting in Washington, D.C. on Thursday for an inaugural gathering of the Board of Peace. That guy's on the Board of Peace. Fuck that guy. Before Argentina's midterms last October, Trump pledged $20 billion in a currency swap to the country, which he predicated on positive election results for La Libertad Avanza. Milei's coalition ultimately triumphed, earning more than 40% of the popular vote, more than any other party. I don't know, with all these protests, something smells there. While his labor reforms are expected to face stiff opposition in the Chamber of Deputies, analysts believe they are projected to pass. Already, a version of the bill passed Argentina's Senate. If the Chamber of Deputies amends the legislation as is expected, the reforms would have to pass back to the Senate for a final vote. The General Confederation of Labor, however, argued that the general strike sent an important message to lawmakers. The strike was clear. There is widespread rejection of a labor flexibility law that we consider regressive and detrimental to the Argentine working class, it wrote. The union added that it would stand firm against any attempt to roll back hard-won rights. Good for Argentina. That's what we should be doing here. I hear a lot of people say that. I've been hearing a lot of people say that we should be doing that here, including me. I'm one of the ones that say we should be doing it here, bitch. Shut it down. Don't do these fucking little parades on the week, your little virtue signaling parades, and call it like a protest. Shut this shit down. If you're going to do it, do it. But I have to go to work the next day. Whatever, fuck off. Okay, cool. So we told you about South Korea's revolving door of presidents. Well, one of them is going to jail forever. South Korea convicts ex-president Yoon Suk-yeol for insurrection. That's right. Oh no, what happened? Okay. So South Korea's former president Yoon Suk-yeol has been given a life sentence due to insurrection after his short-lived martial law declaration back in 2024. Yoon's lawyers have argued that the ruling was not supported by evidence in the case and would discuss with the former president if he wanted to appeal the guilty verdict. The Seoul Central Court also convicted former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo and handed him a 23-year prison sentence for attempting to legitimize the martial law decree by forcing it through a cabinet council meeting, falsifying records, and lying under oath. South Korea's former defense minister Kim Yong-hyun has been sentenced to 30 years in prison over his role in the failed martial law attempt. Amnesty International called Yoon's guilty verdict an important step towards accountability. Outside the court sentencing, thousands of Yoon supporters rallied for the former president, holding placards that read, "Yoon great again," and dropped the charge. Make Yoon great again, that's what it should say. But at a counter-protest, anti-Yoon demonstrators were disappointed by the verdict, arguing for harsher penalties and that the former leader had gotten off lightly. A life sentence is light. They want... They want that motherfucker taken out, son. Yeah, they're like, we of course expected the death penalty, so we are very disappointed that a life sentence was handed down. Protester Lim Chun-hee told AFP, "Kill that motherfucker." Youngwon Chul, a former Marine, also said it was deeply disappointing that someone who should have received an extremely severe punishment for attempting to overthrow the democratic system of the Republic of Korea was instead given life imprisonment. Oh, God. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure he's going to appeal that. Which would be, it would be terrible for him if he appealed and then lost that. And they say, you know what? These people are right. Like, give him the death sentence. Wait, what? I love that, man. They're like, kill him. Like, Jesus Christ, y'all. The bloodlust of South Koreans. Yeah. So, we kind of hit on what's going on in Sudan and what's going on there. I probably should cover it a lot more than I do, but there's so many things that go on. It's hard to nutshell it for a news show like this, but this one in particular I had to put on here. So 24 European countries warn of humanitarian catastrophe in Sudan. 24 European and Western countries have voiced concerns over the continued killing of civilians, destruction of infrastructure, and targeting of humanitarian missions in Sudan. In a joint international statement, the countries said airstrikes and drone attacks on displaced people, health facilities, and food convoys had resulted in a high number of civilian deaths and injuries and had disrupted the delivery of humanitarian aid. The statement said deliberate attacks on humanitarian workers or their vehicles are contrary to international humanitarian law and may amount to war crimes. It stressed the need for prompt and independent investigations into the alleged violations and for those responsible to be held to account. It added that the states of Darfur in western Sudan and Kordofan in the southwest are facing what it described as the world's largest humanitarian and protection crisis. The statement referred to famine and sexual violence, as well as the displacement of 100,000 people in Kordofan alone in recent months. The countries called on the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, and the Sudanese Armed Forces, the SAF, and their allied militias to respect international humanitarian law and to allow rapid and safe access for food, medicine, and essential supplies to reach civilians. They also urged the protection of women and girls in particular and safe passage for displaced people. Separately, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, said Wednesday he was alarmed by reports that more than 50 civilians were killed in drone strikes in Sudan on Sunday and Monday. Turk urged all parties to halt ongoing attacks. The continued attacks by all parties on civilian objects must stop. The parties must take urgent measure to protect civilians, including by refraining from the military use of civilian objects, he said. And yesterday on Abby Dew's and Michael's show, they were talking a lot about what's going on in Sudan too. So I highly recommend you check out their channel. It's Abby Do, Abby Don't, ABBYDO, ABBYDONT. That's on YouTube. That show dropped yesterday, and good stuff as far as like getting more in depth on the situation in Sudan. Like I said, we'll try to do more on it, but there are so many things that's going on there. It's really, really hard to, gather pertinent information in the time frame that we have. I know that's no excuse, but I'll try to do better. I promise. Finally, today, I love how Trump is always fucks with NATO. It's like, you got to pay your bills. You got to pay your bills. You're going to pay for your defense. You got to pay this. You got to pay this. Well, U.S. pays about $160 million of the nearly $4 billion it owes the United Nations. What, Trump not paying his bills? There's a shock. The U.S. has paid about $160 million of the nearly $4 billion it owes the UN. The UN said Thursday, that was yesterday. The Trump administration's payment is earmarked for the UN's regular operating budget. UN spokesman Stephanie Dujarric told the Associated Press, and remember, it's not delivery, it's Dujarric. The UN has said the U.S. owes $2.196 billion to its regular budget, including $767 million for this year and $1.8 billion for a separate budget for the far-flung UN peacekeeping operations. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned last month that the world body faces imminent financial collapse unless its financial rules are overhauled or all 193 member nations pay their dues, a message clearly directed at the U.S. The disclosure of the payment came as Trump convened the first meeting of the Board of Peace, a new initiative may see as his attempt to rival the UN Security Council's role in preventing and ending conflict around the world. Yeah, good luck with that. Trump has said the UN has not lived up to its potential. His organizations did not pay anything to the UN in 2025, and it has withdrawn from UN organizations, including the World Health Organization and the cultural agency UNESCO, while pulling funding from dozens of others. UN officials have said 95% of the arrears to the UN's regular budget is from the deadbeat United States. So Trump talks about fiscal responsibility and all that shit, but then he won't pay his bills to the UN. So, but then again, they think the UN is like this, the new world order. They're going to take over everything. You hear libertarians talking about wanting to get rid of the UN, and you're like, okay. Not like the UN has any power, but all right, whatever. So speaking of Trumpy, wanting to make America healthy again. You remember Maha, with RFK Jr. Talking that bullshit. Maha. Guess what? He's full of shit. Details to come.
Sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publishing things they think are true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
All right, so after promising to make America healthy again, Trump mandates production of cancer-causing glyphosate. That's that shit that's in Roundup, y'all, that causes cancer. Less than a decade ago, U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. helped win a landmark $289 million verdict against Monsanto, which was found to have distributed a weed killer containing the carcinogenic chemical glyphosate. But on Wednesday, the nation's top health official could only shrug after Trumpy issued an executive order mandating the production of the chemical, which was found in 2015 to be probably carcinogenic to humans, by the International Agency for Research on Cancer at the World Health Organization. Since we pulled out of WHO, why do we got to listen to those assholes, right? Trump invoked the Defense Production Act, which has historically been used to spur production of supplies needed for national security. Take a drink. It's national security. To guarantee the supply of herbicides containing glyphosate, claiming a lack of such weed killers would critically jeopardize agricultural productivity, adding pressure to the domestic food system. So you keep on eating that cancer-ridden stuff, otherwise you're unpatriotic. Kennedy, who, like Trump, promised on the campaign trail to confront dangerous pesticides and chemicals, said in a statement that the executive order puts America first where it matters most, our defense readiness and our food supply. What a piece of shit. He also hinted during his confirmation hearing last year that the administration would treat glyphosate as a critical supply for farmers. Ken Cook, president and co-founder of the Environmental Working Group, which supported some aspects of Kennedy's Make America Healthy Again agenda, said he couldn't envision a bigger middle finger to every Maha mom than this. Yeah. What, you mean Trump lied to you? You didn't see that coming? He was president before, right? If anyone still wondered whether Make America Healthy Again was a genuine commitment to protecting public health or a scam concocted by Trump and RFK Jr. to rally health-conscious voters in 2024, today's decision answers that question, said Cook. It's a shocking betrayal to all of us, but especially the people who live and work near farm fields where glyphosate is used. In addition to being linked to cancer, glyphosate has also been found to cause reproductive harms in some studies. Zen Honeycutt, that's a cool name, founder of the pro-Maha group Moms Across America, Maha group, said she was disgusted by the executive order. I guess this is her here. I'm disgusted, literally sick to my stomach. This executive order to ensure the availability of glyphosate is going to do far more than make people sick. It's going to kill and sterilize countless American people. No shit, Sherlock. The use of the Defense Production Act could provide Bayer, the pharmaceutical company that acquired herbicide maker Monsanto in 2018, with legal immunity if it's challenged in court again in public health lawsuits. And let me guess. Let me just take a stab at this. Bayer is a major contributor to Trump and the Republican Party. Probably Democrats too. The executive order is clearly designed to offer a broad immunity. Brett Hartle, Director of Government Affairs for the Center for Biological Diversity, told the New York Times, the order comes months after a major study that had determined glyphosate was safe for humans was retracted by Regulatory Toxicology and Pharmacology, the scientific journal that had published it. It was found that scientists at Monsanto had participated in gathering data for writing and reviewing the paper. Yeah, when you write your own shit, of course it's going to be like, nah, that's in here. And that other authors had received compensation from the company for their work. The journal cited serious ethical concerns regarding the independence and accountability of the authors when it retracted the article. You think? Concerns regarding independence and accountability of the authors? The executive order was also announced a year after Bayer donated $1 million to Trump's inaugural campaign. How about that? During Trump's first term in 2017, 2 years after the WHO Cancer Agency determined glyphosate was likely carcinogenic, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency issued a finding that the chemical, which is used widely on soybeans, corn, and wheat, and in home gardens, was safe. This week, Bayer announced that it had reached a deal to pay $7.25 billion to settle tens of thousands of health lawsuits regarding Roundup. But totally safe. It's totally safe. The product that includes glyphosate as its active ingredient. The company continues to claim the herbicide is safe, even though they paid out $7.25 billion and will probably pay out more. By granting immunity to the makers of the nation's most widely used pesticide, Trump just gave Bayer a license to poison people, said Cook. Full stop. That's exactly what this is. This is like a pay for play kind of thing. You gave us money, you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours. And now he's trying to get it where you can't sue Monsanto, or Monsanto, however you say it. So to mandate it, I mean, he's not even pretending anymore. If he was even pretending in the first place. Who is the Obama lawyer that had the nickname Mr. Monsanto? I know, right? They're all they're all in on it. I mean, this is a bipartisan fuckery at its best, or at its worst, I should say. Meanwhile, Palestinian journalists subjected to systematic torture in Israeli prisons. And we know the prisoners themselves, like just regular people, were in there, but journalists, of course, get a piece of this too. Palestinian journalists held in Israeli prisons have suffered systematic abuse, including rape, torture, and denial of medical care, according to a Committee to Protect Journalists, the CPJ, report published on yesterday. The New York-based CPJ, which interviewed 59 journalists for the report, wrote that all but one reported being subjected to what they described as torture, abuse, or other forms of violence. The scale and consistency of these testimonies point to something far beyond isolated misconduct, wrote CPJ Director Jody Ginsburg. The Palestinian journalists described how Israeli guards subjected them to beatings, sexual violence, prolonged restraint in painful positions, and exposure to loud music, barking, and bomb noises. They also described unsanitary living conditions, medical neglect, and lack of food, causing them to lose an average of 23.5 kilograms, around 52 pounds, over the course of their detention. Journalist Mohammed Nafez Kaoud said that repeated beatings upon his initial detention left deep wounds on his feet that prison authorities refused to treat. The wounds became infected with worms feeding on them. Come on, fallen sky rocks. You're our only hope. 11 of the journalists said guards subjected them to ghost hanging, in which a person is suspended from the ceiling by their arms, bound behind their back, and then pulled upward. Others were forced to kneel or lie face forward for hours, as well as restrained under rain, direct sun, and sewage water. Another detainee, Dr. Nahid Abu Taima, from Gaza's Nasser Hospital, was forced to carry out improvised operations using bleach as a disinfectant. Sami al-Sai, also a journalist, said he was raped by Israeli guards. He was taken to a small cell in Megiddo prison, and soldiers removed his trousers and underwear and penetrated him with batons and other objects, CPJ wrote. Journalist Mohammed al-Atrash said that before his release, Israeli officials ordered him to stop his media work. They told me, if you write as much as good morning on your socials, we will find out, Atrash stated. The CPJ has documented the detention of at least 94 journalists and one Palestinian media worker detained between October 2023 and January of this year, with 30 still behind bars. Most were placed in administrative detention, a system that allows them to be held indefinitely without charge. None were put on trial and prosecuted. These are not isolated incidents. Across dozens of cases, CPJ documented a recurring set of abuse, from beating to starvation, sexual violence, and medical neglect directed at journalists because of their work, stated CPJ Regional Director Sarah Kuda. They expose a deliberate strategy to intimidate and silence journalists and destroy their ability to bear witness, Kuda added. Israel has also killed nearly 220 Palestinian journalists since the start of the genocide in Gaza in October 2023. Israel has also prevented foreign journalists from entering the Strip to document the situation on the ground. On January 21st, an Israeli airstrike in Gaza killed 3 Palestinian journalists, Mohammed Salah Kashta, Abdul Rauf Shayat, and Anas Ghanem. Hope I said those names right. The journalists were traveling in a car to film a newly established displacement camp in the Netzarim area of central Gaza. 2 13-year-old Palestinian boys were killed by Israeli forces the same day. One was killed in a drone strike alongside his father, while the other, Moatzam al-Sharafi, was shot dead by Israeli troops while collecting firewood. But there's a ceasefire going on, right? That's ceasefire. What about ceasefire? Thomas Massey will introduce the No Immunity for Glyphosate Act to undo the recent. They're going to have to. Because Trump knows he's losing in the court system, right? So that's why he's trying to give these people immunity so they can't be sued, so they can keep giving them money. Money! It's a crime. So, speaking of bullshit, over 150 ex-diplomats accuse French foreign minister of spreading disinformation about UN's Francesca Albanese. There she is right there. If you don't know who she is, she's been a consistent critic of Israel. More than 150 former ministers, diplomats, and ambassadors across the world have accused the French foreign minister of spreading disinformation about UN's special rapporteur, Francesca Albanese, over remarks she allegedly made targeting Israel. Where are we at here? Okay. In an era of escalating global disinformation, it's deeply concerning that the French Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs, Jean-Noël Barrot, has relied upon and amplified manipulated content in remarks concerning Ms. Francesca Albanese, UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the occupied Palestinian territory, the diplomats wrote in an open letter issued on Wednesday. The letter followed Barrot's call last week for Albanese's resignation over comments she allegedly made about Israel at a conference on Gaza, which the signatories described as a digitally distorted version of her remarks. Wait, what? They faked it? They said a senior official's amplification of disputed or manipulated material raises serious questions about verification standards and the protection of independent UN mandate holders. This issue extends beyond any individual mandate holder. It raises broader concerns about the integrity of multilateral institutions and the responsibility of member states to ensure that the UN experts can carry out their mandates free from political interference or disinformation. Warning that disinformation undermines trust in multilateral institutions and fosters division among member states, the diplomats stressed that public officials have a heightened responsibility to exercise verification and restraint when addressing UN experts. This controversy must not divert attention from the mass killing of civilians and the catastrophic humanitarian and human rights crisis in Gaza. Leaders have a collective responsibility under international law to protect civilians, prevent further atrocities, and ensure accountability, they added. Reaffirming France's leading role in defending leading role in quotes there, very good, in defending international law and multilateral cooperation, the letter called on the foreign ministry to retract and correct inaccurate remarks about Albanese, reaffirm its commitment to the independence of UN mandate holders, and uphold its obligations to protect multilateral institutions. Yeah, and she's been increasingly attacked because of it, and good on her too for sticking to her guns too. That's the thing, the truth will out, right? What's that phrase? If it can be destroyed by the truth, then it should be. Just like I destroyed that coffee. So good. What else we got over here? A few more items here. We're gonna run over. Usually I've been trying to keep this show short, but it keeps getting bigger. Like it has Viagra or something in it. So we go down under. I come from the land down under, where we apparently will do anything to keep you from criticizing Israel. Police seize art posters depicting Trump, Putin, and Netanyahu in Nazi uniforms from Canberra bar. Free Julian Assange. This is the owner of Descent Cafe and Bar, David Howe. So there he is. I mean, Australia would be looking rough. Police have seized art posters from a Canberra music venue and bar that depict world leaders and others, including Donald Trump and Elon Musk, wearing Nazi uniforms, and are investigating whether new federal hate symbol laws were broken. New federal hate symbol. David Howe, the owner of the cafe and bar in Canberra's CBD, I guess that's the Central Business District, said his venue was shut down for about 2 hours on Wednesday night as police investigated a complaint about hate imagery relating to 5 posters in the window. I think it's ludicrous, to be perfectly honest, he told Guardian Australia, describing the works as an anti-fascist statement. Oh, Antifa! Antifa! And noting that the shutdown had caused the cancellation of an interstate band's performance. By Thursday afternoon, less than 24 hours later, the posters were placed back in the windows with the contents covered with the word censored in red. Howe said he hoped patrons appreciated their return, describing them absolutely as protest art. The posters by protest artist group Grow Up Art depicted various world leaders, including the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and of course, U.S. President and Orange Cheeto Donald Trump in Nazi uniforms. In a statement, ACT policing confirmed it had declared the cafe a crime scene. Jesus Christ. The 5 posters were seized and would be investigated to determine whether charges would be laid under hate symbol laws, it said. ACT policing remains committed to ensuring that alleged anti-Semitic, there we go, there's another drinking game. You start hearing that, just gonna take a drink. Racist and hate incidents are addressed promptly and thoroughly when possible criminality is identified. ACT policing will not hesitate to take appropriate action, the statement said. The ACT government's police minister, Marissa Petersen, said she had heard the community concern. It was probably some Karen about the venue shutdown. Concerned about the shutdown. Okay, all right, that wasn't Karen. She had heard of the community's concern about the venue shutdown and was seeking further clarification about the circumstances surrounding the events that took place. Guardian Australia understands it is the first complaint about alleged hate imagery received in the nation's capital following laws passed earlier this year in the wake of the Bondi shooting. See, that's the thing. Yes, the Bondi shooting, right? Their baby 9/11. About 20 people had gathered at the venue at about 7:15 p.m. local time when 3 police officers showed up, Howe said. I was at first quite shocked. I mean, I couldn't quite believe that these are artistic works, he said. No one was to touch the posters until they'd been removed by the police. The police statement said they had a discussion with the owner, with officers seeking to remove the posters as part of their investigation into the matter, but the owner declined, leading police to declare the venue a crime scene. All right, welcome back, Yonina. I'm glad you're home. Home safe. Howe disputed this claim. If they had specifically asked me to remove the posters, I would have simply taken the posters down. Howe was told to wait for a serious crimes unit to arrive from Gungahlin, around a 25-minute drive to remove the posters. The police left after 9 p.m., he said. Under laws passed in January, hate symbol display offenses don't apply if it's deemed for a religious, academic, educational, artistic, literary, or scientific purpose and not contrary to the public interest. The posters are an anti-fascist statement. It speaks to the authoritarian regimes around the world. Police states are just symptomatic of that, Howe said. And apparently the local police, proved his point. The federal act Senator David said art is a legitimate form of political dissent, and it was important police protected against hate and prohibited symbols while also permitting peaceful protests. The federal Greens Justice spokesperson, David Shoebridge, said federal hate symbol laws were being weaponized against people who use their conscience to speak out for humanity. Of course they're weaponized. Pauline Hanson can spend decades demonizing Muslims in the Senate and the media, but stick punch a Nazi on your wall in Canberra and the AFP comes knocking, they said. Laws rushed through Parliament to fight anti-Semitism are now being used to attack people fighting fascism. These laws were never seriously about hate. They have always been about shutting down dissent. Exactly. The ACT independent MLA Thomas Emerson said he'd written to the ACT police minister on Thursday morning to ask why the legislation's exemptions for artistic purposes hadn't been applied in this instance. This seems pretty Orwellian to me, Emerson said. Yeah, no shit. In attempting to foster social harmony by preventing offense, we can't afford to create more division. Government suppression of artistic expression and dissenting voices is incredibly divisive. And you can bet your bottom dollar that coming to a country near you that kisses Israel's ass, you know that's going to happen. So speaking of kissing Israel's asses, we got a couple of Jeffrey Epsteins for you here. So bear with me. Files reveal Epstein was offered chance to buy U.S. Pentagon and FBI buildings. Emails released in the U.S. Department of Justice files show that the late convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein was offered the chance to buy into a sprawling building tied to the Department of Defense in 2016, according to UK broadcaster ITV News. The 84,710 square meter, that's about 101,312 square yards. Well, this says square, sorry. Yeah. Complex located roughly 1.6 kilometers, about a mile from the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, was described in an investor deck as a mission-critical site and the only property in Arlington, Virginia, other than the Pentagon itself, with the ability to meet the space and infrastructure needs of the DoD. That's the Department of Defense. The proposed purchase price was about $116 million. The structure of the deal would have made Epstein a co-owner and effectively a landlord to the U.S. government. There is no evidence that the transaction went ahead, but the prospect of a convicted sex offender acquiring a stake in property serving the Pentagon raises serious security questions. I'm sure they won't ever be investigated. Among millions of emails published that last month, an FBI informant wrote in a memo that Epstein was a Mossad agent working for Israel. Epstein was close to the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, and trained as a spy under him, the memo adds. Epstein maintained a decade-long relationship with Ehud Barak, a former Israeli Prime Minister and one-time senior military intelligence figure. Barak visited Epstein's New York townhouse more than 30 times between 2013 and 2017. The ties between Epstein and Israel have come into sharp focus following the release of the documents. Beyond his interactions with members of the global elite, including Barak, the files document Epstein's financial support for Israeli groups, including Friends of the Israeli Army and the settler organization, the Jewish National Fund, as well as his connections to the Mossad, Israel's overseas intelligence agency. The Pentagon-linked proposal formed part of three documents, an email, an investor presentation, and a deal summary contained within the newly released files. David Stern, a businessman who referred to himself as Epstein's soldier, forwarded the offer. Stern also served as a close aide to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Yes, it all comes together, doesn't it? Who was arrested on Thursday. We told you about that. In the same year, Stern relayed the Pentagon area proposal. He became director of the St. George's House of Trust and at Windsor Castle and attended an event at St. James Palace where he sat beside the late Queen Elizabeth II. Stern also sent Epstein a separate proposal in 2015 to invest in 2 FBI field offices in Richmond and Baltimore and courthouses, which were called sexy assets. That deal required an initial $25 million, followed by a further $80 million, with ownership routed through a Cayman Islands offshore entity. Real estate investor Jonathan D. Fascitelli originated both property proposals. I wonder why he wanted to buy government buildings or have government buildings. Maybe so he could bug them, because Israel provided security for Jeffrey Epstein's New York apartment. This fucking hobbit. Look at this guy. The Israeli government installed security equipment and controlled access to convicted sex trafficker and child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan apartment building. That's according to DropSite News, and reported that yesterday, citing emails recently made public by the U.S. Department of Justice. Wow, I'm amazed they let those out. DropSite revealed that the equipment was installed in early 2016 at 301 East 66th Street, where former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and his wife frequently stayed at the invitation of Epstein. Barak was close with Epstein, who was convicted of sex crimes involving a minor in 2008 and widely viewed as an asset working on behalf of Israeli intelligence. We already know that. According to the New York Post, files released by the DOJ show the building functioned as a logistical hub for Epstein's world, including housing the underage girls he trafficked. The girls were then brought to Epstein's townhouse 9 blocks away at 9 East 71st Street to give him massages. The building, which contained more than a dozen apartments, was also frequented by Epstein's wealthy guests, staffers, and notable foreign dignitaries such as Barak. Rafi Shlomo, the then director of protective service at the Israeli mission to the UN in New York and head of Barak's security, corresponded with Epstein employees to arrange meetings to discuss security and coordinate installation of specialized surveillance equipment at the 66th Street residence. That's according to DropSite. Shlomo personally controlled access to the apartment for guests and even conducted background checks on cleaners and Epstein's employees, the site added. Barak was entitled to receive personal security services under Israeli law after leaving office as prime minister. The released emails show Epstein personally approved the installation of the equipment and approved meetings between his staff and Israeli security officials. In January 2016, 10 years ago, Barak's wife, Nili Priel, emailed a member of Epstein's staff to discuss installing alarms and surveillance equipment at the residence. The team installed 6 sensors on the windows and installed equipment that allows them to remotely control access to the residence. Priel informed Epstein's staff that the Israeli team can neutralize the system from far before you need somebody to enter the apartment. The only thing to do is call Rafi from the consulate and let him know who and when is entering. Who and when is it? In January 2017, 17th, one of Epstein's assistants provided Israeli officials with a list of employees who would need access to the apartment. A few weeks later, they wrote to Epstein himself that, quote, Rafi, the head of Ehud's security, is asking if I could meet him at 4 p.m. on Tuesday the 14th at his office at 800 2nd Avenue and 42nd Street regarding Ehud's apartment. Shlomo had been replaced by another Israeli official in November 2017 who managed security and surveillance for Barak. Barak's longtime aide, Yoni Koren, also stayed at Epstein's 66th Street apartment on multiple occasions, including in 2013, while he was still actively serving as bureau chief for the Israeli Ministry of Defense. Koren also exchanged information with Epstein for a wire transfer. The files made public by the DOJ regarding Epstein and his contacts with a broad array of powerful figures in government, finance, and academia have shown his close relationship with and support for the State of Israel. An FBI memo released as part of the Epstein files on January 30th states the view that U.S. President Trump was compromised by Israel, that Epstein was a Mossad agent, and that a Jewish religious movement, Chabad Lubavitch, had co-opted Trump's presidency. Despite this and other evidence, much of the U.S. and Western press have sought to paint Epstein, downplay his ties to Israel, instead painting him as an asset of Russian intelligence. Yes, that old go-to. When in doubt, blame the Russians. Despite releasing information about Epstein, including evidence that he operated a sophisticated sex trafficking ring involving dozens of underage girls, the DOJ has not chosen to open investigations against anyone named in the files. Wonder why? I wonder why. Oh, I know why. What was it? Pam Bondi said, well, if we take all these people out, the system will crumble. I'm like, yeah, let the fucking system crumble. What is it? The roof is on fire. We don't need no water. Let the motherfucker burn. Burn, motherfucker. Burn, motherfucker. That shit made me thirsty. Thirsty for justice. Yeah, so, you know, some people talk, we were talking about this the other night, with Abby and Michael about, are the Epstein files, a distraction for something else, or is something else a distraction from the Epstein files? And you think about it, it's like, well, let's bombard the public with all this stuff, and they won't know what to focus on. And then they'll just get frustrated and go back to brunch or whatever they were doing, right? Maybe that was the goal, but you know, we're here to help, kind of keep you focused on some of the more important things besides the Epstein files. Of course, other shit that's going on around the world as well. And of course, our friends who need mutual aid as well. You know, and I always say, if you know somebody that needs mutual aid, please email me at ExtraBulla, EXTRABULLA @gmail.com, and let me know, and we'll put them on the list here so we can share it out. And if you can't donate, that's fine. If you can share out the links, that would be really helpful. So, of course, justice for Aspen, who was wrongly arrested in Georgia under their draconian laws there. She needs money for legal fees. If you can help her out, we appreciate it. Our buddy Chanda, still in her fight, round 3 of her cancer battle. She's a tough broad, but these bills ain't cheap. So if you can help out, again, if you can donate or at least share out the links, we appreciate it. Our buddy Cowboy Kitty, his sister-in-law, who is still fighting being deported, and could use some help as well. She was pulled over for some bullshit by ICE. As we know, ICE is full of shit. So if you can help her out, we appreciate it. Our buddy NoliDee, who needs help after a fire decimated her home, and also our buddy Kevin out in Los Angeles, who lost his home in the fires there. They could all use your help. And again, those links are down below in the description. Again, if you want to donate, that would be great. If you can't, that's fine. Just share out the links. I know everybody's broke as a joke. I don't blame you one bit. Also, a programming note tonight, we got The Secret Show coming up 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific time. Playing lots of fun little videos and stuff. I got a little treat for you tonight in the show. A little OG back in the day funsies that the kids these days don't quite understand. Or maybe they do. Maybe some of the old souls do, but we'll be having fun. A lot of videos, a lot of informative videos, some silly stuff, probably some cat videos, and of course our chickens there. That's The Secret Show tonight, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific time, YouTube, Rumble, and the Book of Faces. And finally today, the Olympics going on. I don't know if they're over with or not, but you know, Valentine's Day coincided with the Olympics. That was last week. Yes, that was last week. No, last Saturday. And so Olympic athletes were promised fresh stocks of condoms on Valentine's Day after villages run short. They should make fucking an Olympic sport, I guess. So this is in Milan, Italy. On Valentine's Day at the Milan Cortina Olympics, a renewed supply of free condoms for the athlete villages was promised by the organizers after going short during the week. Italian. Bueno. We can confirm that condom supplies in the Olympic villages were temporarily depleted due to higher than anticipated demand. The Italian organizing committee said in a statement on Saturday, additional supplies are being delivered and will be distributed across all villages between today and Monday. No raw dogging, folks. You better wrap that rascal. Providing condoms for athletes has been a gift from organizers and a constant fascination to the world for decades. While 300,000 condoms were provided for more than do the math here. While 300,000 condoms were provided for more than 10,500 athletes, that's like what, 30 apiece? Jesus Christ. At the 2024 Paris Summer Games, the original stock was much lower for these winter games. I think 10,000 have been used to 2,800 athletes. You can go figure, as they say. Yeah. International Olympic Committee spokesman Mark Adams said Saturday, it clearly shows that Valentine's Day is in full swing in the village. Reports of no condoms in week 1 of the games followed an absence of plush toys of the official mascots Milo and Tina in the opening days. I don't know if those are connected. They proved more popular than expected in the official Olympics merchandise store. So there you go. We end the show with rubbers. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, join us for the secret show tonight, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. Should be a good time. We always do silly stuff on there, kind of break away from all this serious shit for at least for a couple hours. And of course, next week, Wednesday, me and the lovely and talented Laine Petersen hosting the Undercurrent. That's Wednesday morning at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and Instagram as well. And then this show will be back again next week at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific time. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate all y'all that are watching today. We were trying to get I'm trying to get us to broadcast live on Substack, but for some reason it didn't work today. We'll figure it out later. The Substack will be up later today with all the links to the shows. All the links from the show will be in there, and plus a link to the show if you want to watch it again if you missed something at the front. So anyway, I appreciate all y'all's. I love each and every one of you. Be good. Make sure you're checking out our folks over here in the top right corner there. A lot of good people in this space that are providing information that you can use. So take care, everybody. Love you, and we'll see you tonight if we see you. Peace.
This is City Alpha 5. Woo!